talk a little bit about how we met then.
That is a good question. I always joke about some kind of extreme scene, and then you're like, well, yeah, let's do that.
You've been through some extreme scenes with me at this point. We can talk about that a little later. The first time we played in the dungeon too, I think I beat you up. I installed cameras inside his house, and he had absolutely no privacy. On my computer, all these screens of all these different subs where I just was watching what they were doing every second of every day. And I remember seeing your profile and being like, oh, I'm going to own him completely.
And then I met you. And I would not have expected the consequences from that.
Welcome back to another episode of Uncensored with Mx Tomie. Today we have a very special guest, Zero. He is my first ever submissive when I started Pro Domming, and he's been in my life since 2019 until now, which is one of my longest serving subs of all time, really. And so we're going to be talking about how we met, the story, the evolution of our DS dynamic, and the growth that he's seen in my life as a Dom too. And I think he has a really unique perspective on all of it. So welcome, Zero.
Thank you.
Let's start off really easy so that people can get a sense of who you are. Before you were sort of like this publicly out as a submissive, what was your civilian life like?
Fairly ordinary. I had normal, I had a job, I had normal vanilla relationships, and I would see pro doms occasionally, though usually when I was in between relationships, although I always had these kinds of thoughts and feelings. But it wasn't until I was a little older that I was able to kind of integrate or be fully authentic, integrating sort of both sides of my life.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that journey, because I think that's really relatable for a lot of subs who may have submissive inclinations, but they don't fully, explore it to the extent that they want to due to like social stigma or like fear of judgment. When did you realize you were submissive? What's that origin story?
Oh, well, like all good origin stories, it goes back to the origin. Quite literally. I've always had, how shall I put this? What's the clinical definition here? Heterosexual, submissive and masochistic thoughts. Since I was a child, pretty much, I had kidnapping fantasies when I was a child. I didn't really have the language for it in the beginning. I just had, these kind of nameless feelings, and I always tended to be attracted to the evil queen, or the evil witch in fairy tale movies for some reason, and movies where the hero gets captured and tied up. That intrigued me for some reason. I was always aware of this part of myself being present.
Mm-hmm. And when did you start having the language for those feelings? I know the story of that, but let's chat about that.
As I got older, you become 10, 11, 12, 13, and you're beginning to become aware of your sexuality. My parents had a book called The People's Almanac, one of these hippie tomes from the 70s, that had a whole section on sexuality, and they had little potted biographies of famous people in the history of sexuality, including Freud, the Marquis de Sade, and then Leopold von Sacher-Masoch. And I read his entry over and over obsessively, and for some reason I had experienced strange feelings. I liked the Marquis de Sade as well. Would later start to study him in college, but
same here.
But for some reason, as yet unknown at the time, Sacher-Masoch, his story gave me certain feelings. And then there was a story in the newspaper about a dungeon in LA that I saw when I was, maybe 12 or something. And it was just more of a, oh, look at these crazy people kind of story. They interviewed some of the DOMs and so on. I mean, this is...
This is a modern version of that in some ways.
And this was fairly early on, I think, also in terms of the development of commercial BDSM. So it's like the early 80s. So it was rare to see that kind of, to see that being discussed in mainstream media. But anyway, I saw this story and I cut it out of the paper and kind of hid it away and read it multiple times. I don't know if my parents might have noticed, but, and then there are other little incidents. I grew up in the English countryside, or at least spent my childhood there, and I remember, and there were lots of horsey people around, and I remember finding a riding crop one day and running off with it and testing it on myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All of the signs were there at a very young age. And I think a lot of people who are in BDSM, like, we have these thoughts and feelings. Yeah, and it starts, you're kind of born with it. That is how I tend to see the hardcore, doms and subs in this industry who are not just performing BDSM or performing dominance or submission, but really it's a lifestyle. It's something that is a deep need, not just sexually, but also in various emotional ways. And it makes it a necessity rather than just like a one-off, like, fun tryst. Yeah. What was it like then for you to know this about yourself at such a young age, and try to, find partners and dates? What was that experience like?
Well, again, for a long time, I wouldn't have been able to, obviously, I was aware of the fantasies. I'd had some kind of contact with porn, although I wasn't really a big porn consumer. And I had the usual sorts of vanilla relationships. Didn't really, attempt to kind of translate that into my real world relationships. My kind of private fantasy world was a different question, but, mm-hmm. And though I remember there was one girl in college who I quite liked, who was mean and pushy and kind of bossed me around a little bit, but never went anywhere, sadly. These things is sort of stages of development or stages of awareness of what is possible or what, you can do. There's things that happen in terms of your fantasies, and then, you have what you think are normal relationships, and then you become aware that there's pro BDSM, and then you become aware that there's a lifestyle scene, and then that far from, just being simply a matter of fantasy, there are people who do these things in the real world, which of course is a kind of an incredible, it's not, I'm describing a kind of slow process of awareness rather than sort of one kind of big thunderbolt moment.
Yeah.
But I was aware of the existence of pro BDSM and pro Doms for a long while, and any sliver of mention, in mainstream media or any book with like a hint of fantasy in that direction immediately kind of, embedded itself in my psyche but it took a while before I acted on it.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about how we met then. How did we meet?
That is a good question. How did we meet?
I know. Maybe I'll talk about that instead. So Zero and I met when I started out pro domming. I didn't do any like traditional advertising, mainly because like I refused to pay for ad space at that time. I was saving like every single penny that I had. And so I was on this kink dating app to advertise, essentially. And that app doesn't exist anymore. And I remember seeing his profile, and he had this like extremely well-written profile. It was very clear that you're very submissive, and we had a lot of literary interests in common too. So I knew that we can connect on an intellectual level. And I remember seeing your profile and being like, oh, I'm going to own him completely. And I reached out first, actually, I believe. And then you were really open to this dynamic growing from the professional space. And you have always respected those boundaries too, which I find is, now that I've been doing this for 6 years, like quite rare, oftentimes with submissives who end up wanting to take more than they want to give. What do you remember about our initial meeting?
Well, I remember the headline, Englishman seeks true love / pain.
Yeah.
Which, I'm still quite proud of. I remember your profile as well.
What was my profile like? Such a long time ago.
Oh, well, you quoted a poem. This was the other odd thing.
Was it the Ilya Kaminsky poem?
It might have been.
Yeah.
You quoted, a large chunk of your profile was quoting poetry, which was unique in the context of that particular app. And it was also very well written, of course. And then you messaged me and sent me your pictures, and I was a little... the context of my being on the app was I had decided after the breakup of my last vanilla relationship to be honest, be authentic, to try and seek out a lifestyle DNS relationship. And I had, some experiences in the kink scene. I had dated lifestyle people and attended some events. And at the time, and I wasn't really looking to get back into the Pro Domme scene at that time. But at the same time, I thought, well, maybe I could do a session, and then I met you. And I would not have expected the consequences from that. That came about because of our meeting, or that that you and my relationship with you and our dynamic would become so central to my life. And it is one of the cases, though I know we like to tell this story, one of the rare cases of almost instant rapport with somebody in my life. There was chemistry when we first met, and then there was chemistry the first time we played. And I felt it immediately. It was interesting in that you were new, not to say that I was like some super experienced, grizzled old sub either, but like I was sort of, always had to say I had medium level experience, I still haven't been hung from the ceiling or,
We should do that at some time, actually. I haven't suspended you yet.
I always joke about some kind of extreme scene, and then you're like, well, yeah, let's do that.
You've been through some extreme scenes with me at this point. We can talk about that a little later, but yes.
You always had, the essential core of it was always there. It's changed and refined and grown over the years, and I suppose we will talk more about that later. But
what would you say that essential core is?
Your presence was there from the very beginning. Very natural sense of power. I remember when I first met you, the sense of somebody who might on the surface seem quite shy or quite reserved, but in fact was extremely confident. So if you, listener, can imagine quietness and reserve together with intense confidence at the same time, it makes quite the impression. Also, you laughed at my jokes, which,
Well, you tend to be clever in your good moments.
Yeah, I have my moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Zero was the first person I ever reached out to, my first ever client in the dungeon, the first person I had social time with, which is, getting a dinner and chatting. And, throughout the last 6 years, every new skill set that I have learned, I have tested on him first and foremost because we have that trust bill. And yeah, it's been such an amazing journey. I remember at that first dinner too, we went to some sushi place. What was it called? I don't remember right now.
Sakagura in
Yes.
the basement.
Yes.
It's not far from here in Midtown, actually. But
yeah, I remember.
It's in the basement of this corporate building.
Right.
And it's fun because you have to go, down the stairs or take a little.
Yeah, I remember. I quite like
elevator
sake, and so we went to a place with a big sake offering, and I remember in that dinner too, the first time we were like chatting, I said like, I want to own you. Are you willing to go on this journey with me? And also being really transparent about, I'm new to the industry, right? I want a more experienced sub to give really honest, constructive feedback when I ask for it on my domination, my style. And the first time we played in the dungeon too, I think I beat you up. It was like a pretty heavily sadistic session.
I was kind of, and if I may give you my feedback 6 years later, or 5 or 6 years later, you didn't give me a warm up.
I did not. Yeah.
It was just bam.
Yes, I'm much better at the lead up now.
And I was like, we have a player. But it was interesting because, the dynamic was there, right there from the beginning. I remember that I was able to relax with you in a way that I hadn't been able to relax, in some situations previously. I began to be able, again, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but be able to access subspace more easily and more regularly, in a way that I'd never been able to do before.
So what do you remember about our first session?
I remember, well, apart from the, should we say, immediate intense sensation that I just mentioned.
And I'm much better at the lead up at this point, too.
I'm teasing slightly. Very, very clearly in control, not just in the sense of your role of being the Dom, but you were in control of what you were doing. And you clearly knew your way around everything, around the toys, around the flow of the session. Although, interesting that, there was this also sense of cool and reserve and kind of detachment, that you could immerse yourself in this very intense space. But then I remember, and still is often the case at the end of the session, you were quite serene. I remember being struck by that. And also, you introduced me to Mitski, which,
and Mitski was my session playlist for that first session, and it was her album "Be the Cowboy." And Mitski was my session playlist for many sessions for the first year or two. And the aftercare music was Johan Johansson, which I remember very clearly. I think it was one of the tracks from the movie Arrival, I believe. Yeah. Fantastic alien movie, by the way. It's one of my favorites.
I do like that film as well.
Yeah. It has, sort of a lot of language theory in it, which is a common interest of ours.
Well, it's interesting that, we often have entirely independently the same tastes or similar tastes or overlapping tastes.
Yeah. That's something I've been thinking a lot. This is a slight tangent, but how important taste is when it comes to chemistry and connection, and how, you were the first dinner I had as a Dom, and over the last 6 years, I've been taken out to a lot of different types of dinners and types of cuisines, and how my taste in food has shifted and has been refined through all these different courses I've had with subs. And there's something like really intimate about this really small muscle in my mouth being honed through like repetitive service, right? Like I am changed as much as the subs around me are changed too. So just a small small tangent. My sake taste is different now compared to when I first started, but I still love dasai.
Okay.
A nice dry dasai is still one of my
Yes.
favorites. Yeah, some things don't change, I suppose. Yeah, that first session, I was really new, so I would spend a lot of time over preparing in order to control the controllable factors, right? I remember being quite specific about the temperature in the room, like incense and how it smelled, the lighting, how everything was placed, and I would break down the session by 10 to 15-minute beats, where I call them beats, right? Like sort of a cadence of like when I want you to focus on a specific thought, feeling, or emotional core. And then I will move on to the next thing to either like subvert it, increase it, or like loosen the tension on those beats. Yeah, that was I think a really wonderful first session. And I would remember being struck by how willing you are to give me space to grow and be myself. And I think that's why our DS dynamic lasted for so long too. You've always given me so much space to just be myself in the fullest capacity.
Well,
Yeah.
When somebody knows you a little bit, that's not hard. It was very exciting to see your growth and development. And I wanted to be, kind of a good person to you, as well as being a good sub or a good client. And this is partially informed, partially a result of like the online culture of the 10 years preceding, when we met, where, as I was researching things online and following my interests and so on, that were at the time, and still are, of course, a large number of, with the growth of blogs and social media, a lot of pro doms and lifestyle dominant women talking online and to a certain degree complaining about the behavior of male subs. And I thought, I don't want to be like that. I mean, sometimes when you're young and you're stupid and you're foolish and you're silly, or you're, full of the first kind of frenzy of your submission, sometimes you'll say and do things that are silly. But, I always wanted to, be nice to you. Give you space, also,
I think you would be surprised by how it seems like a low bar, right? Like just be a decent human being and like respect a person's boundaries and like the space in which like I'm comfortable being in a dynamic. Because when I started, we were just client provider in a lot of ways. There was chemistry there, obviously, but like you absolutely respected the fact that like I was trying to build something, and if you want to see me like once a month, I was fine. And then the cadence sort of increased after that. But you've never did the thing which I think a lot of subs right now tend to do, a lot of younger ones too, which is, oh, we have really good chemistry. This is really good dynamic. Can I just like do it for free? You've never approached me wanting things for free before. And that continues to be the case. You're very, very service oriented. What's like for the new subs out there who wants to improve their behavior and grow a DS dynamic, how would you sort of encourage them to be a little bit more like you, basically?
Well, I can't claim any great insight. Just be nice, be polite. It's obviously not going to be the same as interaction, say, with your therapist or your doctor, although there are, commonalities there. But be nice. Treat it as to a degree, professional interaction. Remember that this is a person who has their own life and has, demands on their time and has other interests that they're pursuing. So, be respectful of time. But, just be a nice person. Just be a decent human being, Be polite.
Yeah, it feels like common sense, right? It really does.
Be polite. That would be the biggest thing. Of course, I'm English, but And that's sort of hardwired, but even when you hate somebody. But be polite.
Yeah, let's move to like, so we had that first session, and we began to session a little bit more consistently. I think at that point it was like twice a month, at a pretty regular cadence. And I remember I was the one who brought it up. I was like, I want something regular, so that I can practice obviously all these different skill sets. And I think it'll be like good to, build the DS dynamic. And at the time too, as I was growing like Mx Tomie, it was really, really helpful for me to have such a consistent, supportive foundation for, my stream of income. And you were like, yes, let's do that. And that made, and building that trust from that point on was really, really helpful for me. It relieved a lot of mental, emotional, burdens around budgeting on a monthly basis. And then COVID happened. Let's talk about how our dynamic shifted when COVID happened.
Well, first before that, you did the very interesting thing, which I have no other Dom has done, which is, or at least with me, which is that you wanted to be decided when we would play.
Yes.
And so you wanted to be the initiator. So there was this kind of magical thing of we would play, and then there would be a period of time, a few weeks or maybe a month or something, and then you would contact me and say, okay, are you ready? We're playing on Friday. We're playing on Friday for 2 hours. And I'd be, oh, what? I remember getting texts when I was in the laundromat. And then COVID happened.
I want to pause a little bit there. The only reason I felt comfortable enough doing that with you was because you've already been consistent, right? I think, even when I was starting off, there was a lot of subs where I was like, okay, this is like their initiation is going to be sort of like how this dynamic works. Whereas with you, you've been so consistent. I was like, oh, you're so service oriented that I think you would be comfortable and also not feel taken advantage of if I did it the other way around. Something I'm really aware of is if I'm doing the initiating, sometimes subs get a little, I don't know, they have some feelings around that, being feeling like they're just, a wallet, whatever, if there's no dynamic there, right? And with you, it felt very comfortable to slowly start shifting the power.
Yes, in a real sense too. But my two basic impulses were, first of all, and it's true in other areas of my life, if there is a connection, if I feel a connection with somebody or with something, follow it and see where it goes. And secondly, just as a sub, I was trying to be open to you and being open to what you wanted to do and how you wanted to structure things. So I just followed that. And as I said, it is exciting when, your mistress sort of texts you out of the blue, as it were, saying, let's play.
Yeah, so actually, a little before COVID, I just want to make sure the timeline's right. So we started sessioning consistently, and a lot of that was me reaching out. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, we're consistent enough and I trust you enough where we moved to a monthly thing. So the beginning of the month, it would just be a lump sum. And then I had the freedom to be like, okay, Friday, whatever, there's this, or there's this event I want to do, or there's this class I want to take, or this one-on-one mentorship with a Dom. And that freed up a lot more flexibility in our dynamic. So it shifted from you reaching out for sessions one-on-one to me initiating after there was enough consistency, and then it became a monthly thing. And then COVID happened.
Happened. And that was it. Well, things shifted again, and that also was the cause of, or part of the cause of the deepening of our relationship. We started playing online. I think that was the first time you started playing online.
Yeah, I never played online before then. At the time when we first met, I was face-in. I still had my civilian job too, and I was still doing both at the same time in 2020. So yeah, this was the first time. Yeah, you were also my first digital sub in a lot of ways. We were playing online, completely remote.
And that was interesting, and that was very inventive. You're always very imaginative and creative.
Tell them about our remote play.
The remote play. Well, so I had some implements in my home, but it was kind of, I had like a little plastic ruler, and I think I had a little paddle. Or no, I had like a little wooden spoon that was kind of like a paddle. And you would make me, you would also make me do exercise things, like hold the plank for,
Oh yeah, all the exercise. He wasn't getting enough exercise during COVID, so I was like, okay, well, if you're not, then I'm going to make you do it.
Well, there's
over
part
the
of the shift. You became. I used to joke about you being not only my dom but my spiritual advisor and life coach, and I kid, but there's. To a degree, that's true. And that was part of what happened over COVID. Then also, during that time, which was stressful for everyone all around the world for a variety of reasons, you started checking in on me as well. And the personal relationship developed in that way as well.
So by checking in, he means I installed cameras inside his house, and he had absolutely no privacy. During COVID, I felt so trapped in my own home that for subs who consented to high levels of digital surveillance, I put cameras in their home, and I just had on my computer all these screens of all these different subs. But you were the first one where I just was watching what they were doing every second of every day. And that was my way of fetishizing the fact that I'm like invading their privacy in this way.
Unfortunately, I'm not really all that interesting. There's large sequences of me sitting on the couch reading and perhaps having coffee at my breakfast table, which
like zoning out a lot. You spend a lot of time zoning out. That was when I realized you spend a lot of time zoning out.
Well, I have my quirks. Yes, you're very proud of that.
The camera?
The camera.
The camera is still installed in his place. We've never changed it. Yeah, I still can see absolutely everything that he's doing. On top of the digital surveillance, too, I was getting creative with invading more of his privacy during this time. And so he gave me his passwords to everything. Yeah, absolutely every single login. I could see every single text message, every single email he sent out. The password to your phone. I had a little phase where there's this like phone remote connect, and I would just, be looking on my phone and scrolling his and seeing all the videos he's watching, all the credit card transactions, absolutely everything. And that was a lot of fun. And that was a really interesting way of like how I got to know you a little bit better, like your spending habits and, what time you wake up, what time you go to bed, stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah. What did I say at the time? Yeah, I was like, I want to be omniscient and omnipresent. Yeah, on top of omnipotent in your life, too.
Yes.
The three big O's, and the digital surveillance was a big part of the omnipresence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I remember. you quite like that.
I still do.
And I did, like that kind of semi-divine presence in my life. In some ways, it was comforting during that period.
Yeah.
Yes, and then we played together again in person for the first time after a few months.
Yeah. Well, when was that? What happened there?
You came to my house.
Oh yes, yeah. My first. Yes.
Was that your first out call?
That was my first out call too. Yeah.
Wow.
So going to your place was my first time, and oh my gosh, yeah. I remember going and I was like, okay, the first thing you're gonna do for this session or whatever is you're cleaning everything. Yeah, and I made him clean his entire place.
That was the first. Yes, all right.
Yeah.
That was before COVID, but the first time you visited was before COVID. But then the first time we played in that summer of 2020. I mean, like the first time we played after a separation for a while and playing online.
Yeah.
And and then you came to my apartment and gave me a nasty bruise on my thigh. Very nice black and blue color.
Very pretty color.
But that was very interesting.
Thanks for watching this episode of Uncensored with Mx Tomie. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're a very good sub. And don't forget to follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon, and all the other apps that I'm on. I'll see you on the next one.